Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with April, an author, a writing coach, and has a great love for American history. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. It's very nice to have you on. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, David. So nice to meet you finally. How are you?
I'm good. And has all the renovation work been done? Because we were going to do this last year and you had building works, or somebody near you had building work.
That's right. No, I was turning the window of my office into a door. It was very noisy for a period, but now I have this lovely door that opens onto my backyard. I can step outside.
Yeah. But thank you for the patience and for coming back to me and rebooking. It was, genuinely appreciated. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm glad we could make it work. Thank you for hanging in there.
No, you're welcome. I just wanted to go over something we were just initially talking about before we started recording, and California history and how your great grandparents were kind of an integral part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So at least my mom's family, they were Germans who came over to California directly. They skipped New York, which is unusual for a lot of American immigrant families in the 1800s. And they came direct to California and they started a dairy farm. 1880s-ish. I don't have exact dates off the top of my head. And it was multi-generation. They came. So my great-grandparents were the kids who came, but they came with their parents and grandparents. And
Wow.
Everyone came from one small town in Germany and just basically started fresh. They built themselves their church. It was a very connected community. We actually always joke that we're really kind of glad that my grandma ran off and married someone outside of the community because after a few generations of everyone staying in one place, it was getting a little weird.
Yeah. I mean, that's a real problem.
Yeah.
And you kind of get to the point of look, we just need you to marry somebody outside of the bloodline who has their own teeth.
Right, please.
That's the only two requirements.
Yeah, it's a low bar.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. But because like you and I were saying beforehand, it's fascinating because you can touch that history. You can have conversations with people who were part of it and knew the people. And one of the things I think that does fascinate me about the United States of America is it was a new country at the start of the Industrial Revolution. So all of the technology kind of. If I think because I'm in the UK, there's thousands of years of history. There's roads that road has been there for as long as people have been
Roman.
Here. There's Roman road just down the road from me, and we've just eventually got around to putting tarmac on it. Whereas everything so the infrastructure was already in the United Kingdom. The Industrial Revolution came along later. We already had all the towns, all the villages. Nothing really new developed. Whereas the United States is unique because the country developed as the technology developed. So that's like when the infrastructure, the roads opened up, the trails and the railroads, it was new. The country was still new. People didn't own things. State governments hadn't been established. States haven't been established. You were still sorting out your laws.
We were, in California even more so, right? Because we were that much more removed from, from what was happening on the East Coast. Absolutely, I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, and you kind of go from almost 1850 to 1900s, and so all right, we're a country now. Just that quick. Whereas everyone else is that took us thousands of years.
Everything happened faster after industrialization. And trains were huge. Trains were what really opened up the West Coast. And as a writer, I get really interested in the stories behind the people who actually made all those things happen. And so particularly in California, it's not that people weren't here. There were something like 500 different groups of Native people living here, each with their own language and culture and all of it. So it's not like there weren't people here, but when the West invaded, it did so at such a fast clip. There were a few people here, like the monks, the Spanish monks were here in the late 1700s. But then as soon as the gold was found in California in 48, I was 48. And then by 49, the like from people from all over the world, Westerners, people from the Asian continent, like boom, like it just took off in a way that was not necessarily good for anybody, really.
No, and I think one of the things that people possibly don't appreciate is you're going to read a newspaper. If you can read, you're going to read a newspaper from another country, and you're going to make a decision. I'm going to go to California for the gold rush to make money because I'm in poverty somewhere, most likely in Europe. That trip is going to take you at least 6 to 8 weeks. There's a good chance you're not going to know anyone. And so you've got to get up, set up, get established. And the newspaper that may have given you the idea might already be 6 months old. And
right.
So it might be...
Well, and I read an interesting bit of trivia on that actually most of the people when they got that news, they were either too poor to travel or they were rich enough and settled that they're like, I don't need gold. So the majority of people who actually came were in this little slice of in between. And they were like gamblers and brothel house runners. They were people who had money, but it wasn't like legit money. And so they hadn't really settled into a comfortable life. Yeah. And those were that's where California started. And I think it says a lot about us as a state. Those were the people that
because there was no way to check facts. You couldn't verify what you were reading. And if you knew somebody that had sent you a letter, by the time you got the letter, it might be 3, 4, 5 months old. So you could then say, right, I'm going to get a ticket. And it will be 12 months later before you see that person and land where they are in the hope they're still alive and they were telling the truth.
And it's not just getting to North America, right? You could go to New York and then there was no railroad out to California. So you had to cross a whole continent on horseback, I guess. You could go down to Panama and trek through the jungle. And most people died trying to do that. Or you can go all the way down around South America. And that southern tip, that ocean is really rough. Lots of shipwrecks. There was no easy way, at least for the European Westerners, to get to California. I mean, it's fascinating.
It is.
Fascinating.
I had a guest on once who was from Australia. And she'd written a kind of fictional story that was really about her grandfather. And he ended up in Australia because he was on a boat. And as they often did, they sailed from continent to continent, country to country sort of thing. It wasn't direct. And I think he was actually supposed to get off at South Africa or something. But whatever happened is when he got nearby, he caught a disease. And effectively, he wasn't allowed off the boat. And then, of course, the boat left. So he ended up in Australia, which was never part of his plan. He didn't know anyone, had no contacts, hadn't been able to let anybody know that he had to stay on the boat because he was too unwell to get off.
And that's really far from anything. Oh my gosh.
And he had no job, no money or anything. And he literally just walked up to the guy in charge. He's like, I don't have anything and I don't know anyone. Do you have a job? And they were like, yeah, actually, can you read and write? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, can you go and do this for us? And he ended up doing surveying.
Lucky guy.
Yeah. But it was just because of the way quarantine and stuff worked back then. If you were on the boat and you were supposed to depart, but no, actually, some fever's broken out. Well, none of you are leaving. And the captain's like, well, I've got a schedule. So, you're all coming with us. And they'd be like, but I've got a plan to do this. Yeah, you'll have to get the return trip, mate. We're leaving. And that's how it was. And this is, so the sort of trepidation that these people didn't seem to suffer from. I'll get anxious because it's rush hour and I might be late. These guys put all their faith that the captain knew the direction.
Right, and that the winds would work in their favor, and that they wouldn't all get scurvy, and
it's just the most remarkable people. But to them, that was everyday life. So but so thank you for indulging me in that for a moment. I love,
one of my favorite topics.
Yeah. So we are going to obviously talk about your upcoming book and stuff, and your writing and everything like that. One of the things I wanted to just explore with you, if we may, because I found it on your website, is in your manifesto. I was reading the manifesto, and I loved the idea because it was like an exploration of fiction to kind of resolve your own issues, if you like.
Yeah. That's one way of looking at it. It's interesting. No one's ever played that back to me in that way before. I should share what the manifesto is for people who don't know.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay.
But what I mean by that is you kind of express it in a way that writing can be cathartic for you as well as for the people you're trying to write for. Do you know what I mean? You can actually indulge yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think writing, I mean, it starts inside of us, right? We feel some reason we want to write a story. But then I think what happens a lot is that, particularly given politics and wars and everything that's going on in the world, people have a tendency to say, like, I should be doing something useful. What am I contributing to the world if I'm just sitting here writing my little made up story? And I wrote that manifesto to basically, I just feel so deeply that, like, the crazier the world gets, the more we need to tell our stories. Yeah. And for the reasons that I list in the manifesto, there's 3 main reasons. I'll just share them really quickly. But one is...
Let's explore them. It'll be great.
Go into them? Okay. So number 1 is if you write something from your experience and someone else reads it and they've had that experience, they don't feel so alone. Yeah. Right. And particularly, like, let's say you're from a generally dismissed group or a minority of some kind. It could be racial, it could be gender identity, whatever it is. And there may be some kid living someplace who thinks they're the only one. And so when they read your story, it's suddenly like, oh, like, people have done this before. I am not the only, and that strength and solidarity that a story can bring to someone who feels like they're all alone, it can be life-changing. Yes, life-changing. Yeah. Yeah. And then number 2 is the idea that if you share something that's totally different from your reader's experience, you actually are helping to build empathy. So, like, if I read, I don't know, A Thousand Splendid Suns, right? And it's about these 3 women who are living, I forget, it's in the Middle East somewhere, a very oppressive regime, and there's war, and and that is so different from my experience of, like, growing up in California. And when I read that, I suddenly understand why, like, what someone else's life might be like. And and that's empathy. And so having read that, I suddenly have much more empathy for other people. And if our world needs anything right now, it's more empathy. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things that fiction can do in this world, is help us understand each other better. And then number 3 is, also, it just hits all my nerdy buttons, but, like, as writers, we don't have to figure out how things are done. We don't have to know logistics or figure out the budget or do, like, any of those things. We just make things up, and then those things can go on to inspire the people who actually do. Like, we can write a utopia, and some politician might be like, wait a minute, I could make that happen. Or we write about time travel, and some engineer is like, wait a minute, I can make that. Like, we can... So much of scientific innovation is actually inspired by fiction, and I just love that. I love that. No, so those are, like, the 3 things. Yeah,
but I do. I like it because, like I said, when I first looked at it, I was just like, this is a great exploration of how you can use fiction as a tool to kind of lay down things you're uncomfortable with and explore the darkness, why it's uncomfortable, why it might torture you, why it might excite you, but ultimately why it doesn't make you a bad person. And with a lot of things, when you actually, I can't remember the exact line, but it was in the manifesto just above it, about just you can use writing fiction as a tool to just explore things. And I like that because the people, like you say, they're always trying to just find some purpose to write. It's like, it's going to solve the world's problems, or I must write about this because it's a blah. No, just what's on your mind. Just write that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, I've worked with a lot of writers at this point, and the people who are writing books to solve a problem, they're like, I'm going to write this story to teach people that they should blah, blah, blah. The stories are never very good. There's with that, when that's the intention behind it, it always feels like you're getting a lecture. The book is just not very enjoyable. Versus if you write something that feels really true, like an honest exploration of your own ideas of like, and you're figuring things out as you're telling, instead of just like instructing people on whatever they should know. When it's an honest exploration, that comes through on the pages, and the reader feels like they're on that journey with you, and you're learning together. And yes, as the author, particularly in second, third drafts, you can go back and craft things and shape them a little bit, and you are guiding the reader. But the best stories are ones that aren't necessarily out to make people understand something.
No, I agree. 'Cause when I wrote my first book, I originally tried to write something that was kind of funny. I was in my sort of mid-30s, and I wanted to kind of... It was originally an idea about 3 old school friends that had reconnected because they'd all ended up divorced. And it was just supposed to be kind of... I think I wanted to kind of be funny and trendy or something. I don't know. I think it, and no matter how many times I tried to write something about it, I never got past a few kind of tacky ideas about dates that went wrong. Did you know what I mean? And one of them was based off my own experience. It was just like, but it was nowhere near enough. And I know it's going to be like a massive leap in the opposite direction, but I ended up writing a book on reincarnation based on the perspective of somebody who committed suicide. Because it was bothering me, because I had troubles in my 20s where I thought about committing suicide and I nearly did it. But I'd also, because I've kind of raised, as I describe myself, as an Irish Catholic, I had family members that had committed suicide, and people I'd worked with, and I knew of sort of 3 or 4 suicides by the time I was 30, sort of thing. And being a Catholic, that's a massive conflict. So, and I never realised until I started just trying to write about it how much it was bothering me. And I ended up writing a book about reincarnation from the point of view of somebody committed suicide and how their body reincarnates. And it was the simplest thing in the world to do, because I just actually was just, and it's so horribly cliche, but I just listened to the story that wanted to be written. And it's,
I mean, it's a cliche for a reason. I've had that experience too, where it's like, this is the story, and it just kind of comes, and you're like, man, that's
and that's it. And I hate using that phrase, but that's the only way to describe it. It's just like, it wanted to be said, and it wanted to be heard, it wanted to be written, and so I was like, oh well, you crack on with that, and I did, and it was the simplest thing I ever wrote. Because I stopped.
That's wonderful.
What you were saying at the beginning, I stopped trying to be something or someone, and instead just actually, what's troubling me? What do I want to write about?
Just tell the story that's on the heart. Yeah, and just write it. Yeah,
that was.
That's magical. I love that.
Yeah, and I know it happened, and it happened really quickly, and I never really had any problems with the discipline of writing, because the only things that ever there would be things where I'd touch on, I'd be like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. So I'd try to skirt around it, and then wouldn't be able to write much, and I'd have to come back to like, okay, what was it? Okay. And I figured out, just write what bothers you about it, and then just leave it in there. And yeah. That's a pretty good strategy. There's so many reasons that people don't write, and it is almost never that they don't know how to string a sentence together. I mean, writing, it's like the actual the craft part is almost never what trips people up. No. It's the confidence, it's the imposter syndrome. I don't really believe in writer's block. There's like 10 different things that I like. When someone says, oh, I have writer's block, I'm like, okay, I have like a little list in my head that it's one of these 10 things, but writer's block is like this little shorthand that we use of like, oh, we've got writer's block. And those are the things that really get in our way. I discovered for want of a better term, my writer's block was lack of planning. And and I figured out all I had to do was put a date in my diary as if I was having a meeting, and 2 hours, 3 hours, once a week, twice a week, it didn't matter. And as long as I committed to, I've put that in the diary that an hour and a half on Friday at 2:00, I'm going to start writing. I never really had much problems writing. And
that's a huge step, though. Most writers can't even do that, because what most writers do is they put it on their to-do list as like, it's someday they'll get to it, and so it just getting pushed down and pushed down and pushed down, and they don't like make the date with themselves. If you put it on your calendar and say, this is my writing time, and then when your friend calls up and is like, hey, let's go get dinner, you have to be able to say, like, no, I have other plans. Like, I'm doing this other, and if you can't do that, you just won't get your writing done. You've got to make the time, like you're saying.
People said, well, what about inspiration? I said it arrived every time at about 2:05.
Yeah.
If I set the appointment,
it's amazing how it'll come. Yes.
It just like, again, and another phrase I hate, trust the process. It just happened. And I say to everyone, just start writing a sentence, and you can even write the sentence as, I'm sitting at the computer, I'm really getting annoyed because nothing's really happening, I don't know what's on my mind, and this is feeling really shit, and then something random will pop in your head, and just follow that. And then just let the trail will eventually get back to whatever character you're supposed to be dealing with at that moment.
Well, yes, sitting down, making the space invites that to happen. It can't like inspiration can't happen if you're now and then it's the mark of like a brand new writer. They only sit down to write if they feel inspired to, and that's totally fine. It's lovely. Like, do that. But when you want to get serious about finishing something, you got to put it on the calendar.
And it is. I will say to anybody that does it is, all of us do at least 3 drafts, so get that into your head first.
At least, yes.
And that's before you give it to someone to proofread and an editor, and then they'll come back and pull it apart, and you think you've already done that to protect yourself. You haven't. So get past that. It doesn't matter.
Writing is rewriting.
No matter how bad the book is or how good the book is, you are going to be petrified about releasing it.
It will take many drafts.
And you'll never, and as soon as you put it out there, you suddenly think, oh, Jesus Christ, what have I done?
I definitely have that feeling when I give it to readers along the process. Like, my husband's usually my first reader. When I send it to my editor, the publisher, like, I definitely have that moment of like, but because I've done so many drafts on things before they officially go out, that by the time the book is coming out, I'm like, I'm so ready. Like, I never want to read it again. I'm really happy with it, and go for it. Like, by the time a book comes out, I'm well into the next book. So
it's like
those over it.
Those visitors that come for the weekend. It's like, you should go home now. Beat the traffic. You'll make good time if you leave now.
You should maybe go. Yeah.
So when did you start? Where did the writing start for you?
I've always loved writing, but I had this idea that I had to get like a real job. And so I actually studied science in undergraduate, my college experience. I love science. I'm a big fan of science, but I was not great at actually doing it. So then I floundered a little bit. And what happened is I was living in student housing with my husband. He was getting his graduate degree. I was pregnant, so I couldn't really find a job. No one wanted to hire a visibly pregnant person, train them, and then just send them on maternity leave. So I had all this time. And what I found is I would like to fill the days, I was just writing short stories, and I loved it. And after my daughter was born, we moved down to Los Angeles, and I thought, well, maybe I could actually do this writing thing for reals and make a living at it. And so I went back to school. I got my graduate degree in writing, and then struggled for another 6 years to try to finish the novel. But around 2016, everything kind of clicked into place. I finished the novel, started getting my short stories published, found an agent. The book went out, won an award, wrote the next book. Everything just kind of came together. And when I looked back at what had shifted, because even after getting my graduate degree, I was not having any success in my fiction writing. What really made the difference was when I started meditating on a regular basis. And at first I thought oh, well, that can't be it, right? They were correlated. I'd started meditating at the same time that everything started going right. But at first I was like, correlation isn't causation. But when I really sat down and looked at it, what I realized was that there were 6 distinct teachable ways that practicing mindfulness on a regular basis had changed me as a writer, had made my writing better, had made it more enjoyable, just across the board had changed everything. And when at that point I was already kind of working as a writing coach with writers. And when I started bringing in mindfulness and teaching them just a couple of the little things, the really little changes, they started having the same benefits. And that was when I was like, okay, I got to put together a book proposal for this one. And that's the book you mentioned earlier that's coming out this summer.
Yeah. Well, that's Sit Right Here. Is that correct?
Yes. Right with a W. Yes.
Yes.
Sit right here. Yeah.
I said like it had full stops between each one, so I was just like, I'm going to pronounce that.
It has a little period.
Yeah.
Sit right here. Yeah.
And so, what do you think happened then when you started the mindfulness that kind of changed it all?
Well, the number one thing is kind of what you were talking about of being able to drop into that state of focus when you sit down at your desk, because a lot of times at this, I'm counting myself among this, but like what I hear from a lot of people, they sit down to write and then you stare at that blinking cursor, or you write a sentence and delete it, and nothing really happens. And so one of the first things that I realized is that if I did the meditation right before writing, I could get my brain into a place where I could let distractions fall away. And it does take some intention. Like you got to turn the phone off. You got to shut down social media. You got to be in a semi-private, quiet space. Like I sat at the kitchen table for a long time when I was first writing, but I would do it really early in the morning before anyone woke up. So there is some logistical making space, but then there's also just training your brain to notice your own thoughts is a remarkable training for writers, because what happens is, like, if you're doing, for instance, the write and delete thing, you write a sentence and delete it, that's your inner critic saying, oh, that's not very good, or, oh, you're really going to start there, or, the 1,000 things that your brain will say to you. And if you can notice that thought is just another thought, and that's one of the trainings of meditation, right? Of like, it's just another thought, let it go, and you can even give a little response, be like, okay, I know it's not very good. I'm just going to keep writing, because as you said, you're going to be rewriting. There's going to be multiple drafts. But if you can't recognize that as just another thought, you're going to keep writing and deleting, and never get anything down on the page. So mindfulness helps you. I mean, that was one of the first things I noticed, that it allowed me to recognize that critical voice when it piped up and just be like, yeah, I know it's not good yet. That's okay. I'm going to keep writing.
I like that, because it reminds me of like taking it seriously. But there's I want to write something. I've got this plan, and like I said, so I would set a date in a diary, and that's, in a sense, respecting the art and taking it seriously. And that mindfulness practice, before I sit down, before I start putting pen to paper, I'm going to take a moment to get myself into a place to take it. And these little rituals is kind of subconsciously telling yourself, you're now taking the art seriously. You're doing this correctly, for want of a better term. But there is a process that needs to be respected. It's not just about putting something on paper. It's how you present it to yourself to get there. And people don't kind of understand that's what all of us learn along the way, is that actually what I learned is... So a different way that I would put it is, if somebody had a project at work that required a god-awful PowerPoint presentation, they would, but they would do their research. That they would have drafts. They would even they would set times. They would set deadlines. They would do all of these, because they're ultimately they're just taking it seriously. That's how you write a book. That's just
how you write a book.
It's a work project. Do your due diligence. Turn up on time. Don't slack off, and get your ass in the seat and do some work. But just approach it with the same discipline. But like you say, also with that compassion, that mindfulness of, what is it that brings the best out in me?
Well, and noticing that one of the thoughts that come up a lot are the I'll do something else thoughts. And I see, I mean, this used to happen to me when I was at work too, working on some god awful PowerPoint. Like you start writing and then you're like, I should unload the dishwasher, or like, I should take the dogs for a walk. And I used to be, I wouldn't even notice. I would sit down to start my writing, and the next thing I knew, I was unloading the dishwasher or organizing the closet, or the things that we will do to avoid our writing, because it can be difficult to write. And if you don't recognize that you're pushing, like I still sometimes I'll push away from my desk and be like, wait a minute, no, it's my writing time. And I come back and I get back to work.
But you made an excellent point when you said you were getting yourself ready for meditation. No social media. Turn the phone off. Make sure you're not going to be disturbed. Because again, it's structured because, no, I'm about to do something, so I'm going to take it seriously. I'm going to be respectful of the process. And people, they do it so light-hearted and then get really distressed that they don't get any results. And it's just like,
writing is a task that takes deep focus, and focus takes a while to get into, and it's gone in a second. Someone's like, hey, what do you think of this? Or the phone rings or what and then you have to do the thing and then reset, get back into that focus state. It's a whole and so, you do want to set up logistically, like room for yourself to be focused, and then you got to get focused, and then you have to try to stay focused.
Well, you said, sorry, I was going to say, I cut you off there.
No.
You said something earlier that stuck with me as well, is, if somebody then rings you up and says, oh, do you want to go out for a drink or a coffee or something? No, sorry. You've got to treat it like a serious appointment. It's like, no, at 2:00. So, 2:00, April's, oh, did you fancy going for a coffee? I'm in, no, sorry, I've got something on, I can't do it. And actually what I'm doing I've scheduled 2 hours of writing. And you have to treat it like that, because I believe that there's something subconsciously where kind of the craft or the where you and I were talking about it, when you listen to it, it just tells you the story one sentence at a time. And as soon as you kind of get into that zone, you don't question it. It's just like, oh, right, okay, this is where we're going today. But the way I found that I can make that turn up is that process of, doesn't matter what else I'm doing or what sort of week I had, because it says in my diary on Monday, oh, right, on Thursday at 2:00 you're writing. So that's in my brain. And it's just there. I've scheduled it. It's almost like another person that has to be treated with respect. Otherwise, it won't. If you turn up late, if you cancel an appointment, it loses interest in wanting to talk to you. And you have to nurture it and respect it.
Yeah. Well, and there's real science around the idea. I read an article once about this idea of like start quick, finish slow. They were studying school students, high schoolers, I think. But what they found was that if you set the intention, if you're like, okay, I've looked at the assignment, I know what I need to do. I'm not doing it now. I'm going to do it Thursday at 2:00. But your brain will actually work on it. Your brain, like your subconscious is going to be kind of mulling it over, because you've set the intention. And then when you do sit down to write, it comes so much easier because your brain is ready for it. It's like, we knew this was coming. We've got some ideas for you. Like, quick, let's type these. And it just comes so much faster. There's real science around that idea of, look at it, know what you're going to do, but don't work on it right away. Set a time to do it, and then it will come easier when you get there.
That's 100% my experience. It's just set that intention so that your subconscious knows that's the plan, and in the background, it's whirring away with And I'll say it again just to kind of emphasize: you have to treat it seriously. You have to take it seriously and respect it, because if you don't listen to it, if you don't, and you kind of like just flake on it, I find it kind of punishes you, and is like, or teach you like, don't ever do that to me again, because I was ready. I did my part, and
I did my part,
and you didn't turn up, and it kind of holds it against you. And
I also feel like, just in terms of habit building, like I totally agree with everything you're saying, but in terms of building a habit too, that like, building a habit, you're always building habits. Everything you do, you're practicing something, right? So if you get home from your day job and you had planned to work this evening on your writing and you blow it off, you're getting better at blowing it off. And you will get better and better at that until you're not writing at all. If you suck it up and do the thing you told yourself you were going to do, you get better at that, and it gets easier, and you will write more and more and more. And just you're always practicing something, right? We want to be intentional.
When I used to do a lot of coaching, I used to tell people all the time, your habits are like a restaurant. They are always serving you exactly what you ask for. But if you're not careful, you don't realize what you've written on the menu.
Yes, exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because that like you say, you've had a rough day, tough, going right.
Yeah, not feeling like it. So sorry, go right.
Yeah, that must be really nice for you. Write that down.
Yeah, put it in the book.
But sometimes that's why I say it can be cathartic. Because do you know what? If you've had a shit day, well, there you go. There's your next character problem. How they got off their ass when they're having a shit day.
Yeah. Yeah, or write that shit day into the story. Like that's good conflict. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Do you see what I mean? That's
Absolutely.
literally like, where did the ideas come from? Well, what sort of a day did you have? What sort of day did somebody else have? Just write it in there. There used to be I can't remember what the name of it was. They probably still exist. You used to get these big kind of dice type things with ideas. That, you know, like if you didn't know what to write, and you just roll it, and whatever it landed on.
I think I've seen those.
You had to do that. Okay, I need to write that. You know, and but they work if you get stuck. If you're caught, because you can take it out later if it doesn't fit. It's not important. It's not important. So, what is Sit Right Here about?
It really is about those 6 ways that I realized that mindfulness had made in writing easier, not necessarily easier, but less painful. Write more and suffer less is the subtitle of the book. And I mean, writing can be hard. And actually, I find that I feel like the better you get at writing, the harder it is. Because when you don't know what makes a good sentence versus a bad sentence, you can just string a bunch of words together, call it a story, and you're done. Easy. As you start to care more about diction and all those things, writing can get harder. But my whole argument in the book is that, like, even though it's hard, we don't have to suffer so much over it. And so those are the practices. The first one is about finding the focus, like I was talking about earlier. And then there's 5 others that I go into, kind of ending with the more emotional part of writing, like dealing with rejections, dealing with imposter syndrome, that no matter how many successes you have or don't have, your inner critic will always have something to say about it. Mm-hmm. And so again, just learning to notice those thoughts that come, because a lot of times people think like, oh, they'll feel like, I'm not a real writer. I don't, I won't be a real writer until I get something published. And then they get something published and they're like, yeah, but it was just like a short story in a journal. And then they get a novel published and they're like, yeah, but it was just this. And then maybe I know writers who have been New York Times bestselling authors, and the fear then is wait till you try to write your next story and then everyone will see that you're a fraud, right? Like that little voice never gets tired of telling you everything. And it's exhausting. And I think it's one of the reasons that writers have a well-earned reputation for being tortured. That like it's a rough life, and it doesn't have to be. That's the argument of the book.
I think that there's a couple of things that always stood out to me. Is one, your friends and family are most likely not going to buy the book. So don't put
I make mine buy it. They don't have to read it, but they got to buy it.
But because we like this idea that our nearest and dearest will support us. Well,
right.
Your nearest and dearest might not be book readers,
Yeah.
So
that's very true.
Don't put pressure on them. The other one is the surprising amount of people that have never written a book that have advice on why your book isn't going to be any good and why it's a waste of your time. Don't listen to them. Do you know what I mean? Writing a book is like a bucket list. It starts off with just get it ticked, and then if you still liked what you achieved, don't worry. The next book will find a way of telling you it needs to be written.
Yeah. It really is something. I mean, I don't like the word calling, but there is an element of there's a story that you want to write. And sometimes it's a story. What's that wonderful quote that if there's a book that you want to read that doesn't exist, you have to write it?
Yeah.
Like 100%. That's someday I'm going to write a romance series set in California in the 1800s, because I've always wanted to read a romance series set in California in the 1800s, and there isn't one. So someday I have to write that book.
It is that there's these fascinating histories that haven't been written that we don't know about because we have no written history. So but that gives us the license to write what we want the story to be. And like you said, there was your family and many others all came over from Germany, from a small place, and got to the point where they literally had to recognise we can't let anybody marry anybody in the village. They've got to step outside. Now that brings in some wonderful dilemmas, because there is a romance, because you can get a point where, a young man and a young woman are being thrust together in the oldest cliche of all, of an arranged marriage, and but they find love out of the desperation of having to build something out of the dirt, and that struggle, and that struggle turns into the ultimate love story. But really, it was because, we've got too many inbred cousins. One of you's got to get your own teeth and breathe outside the bloodline. It's which way you present it.
Exactly.
And that's part of the fun of storytelling. As the author, you get to decide which way is it presented. I mean, is it a Romeo and Juliet kind of story where they weren't supposed to get together, or is it an arranged marriage where the kids have no say and the parents have decided? I could make that story anything I want it to be. I love being a writer for that very reason. I get to make it all up.
Yeah, or is it just two people get stranded and have to figure it out, and figure out actually the best way is if I work with you, and then kind of like some of the best romances are the ones that you don't see happen until the end. And it's kind of like, and again, although it is a bit cliche, he or she is about to get on the train at the end of the the end of the whole story, and then they the train departs and they're still there because they realise actually you've seen the love story play out without realising it's a love story, and that ending that's great.
Yeah. I mean, I have not actually written a traditional romance before. I generally write literary fiction. But one of the things I love about romances is that they have these formulas. Certain things are going to happen. There's when they meet, there's the initial attraction. There's going to be a fight in the middle where you think, oh, they won't end up together. And then they reconcile and then the happily ever after. But for me, the fun is in being in a story and thinking I know this ends happily ever after because it's a romance, but I don't see how they're going to get there. And that's actually really hard to do as a writer, to be okay, readers, we all know this is going to end happily, but I'm going to make you wonder how in the hell it's going to possibly end happily. That's hard to do. And when it's done well, it's really fun.
My favourite romances, when I'm not being cynical, is similar to what I described. There's some kind of thing where they meet, they reluctantly are pushed together through circumstances, and both of them are initially cold, and sometimes that's because of status, location, whatever. But then they get to the end of it, surviving everything, and both have a realization that their life is just better if that person is in it. But but one of them is, I finally got you to the where I promised to deliver you, or I'm now going to catch a train, just whatever it is, and then they make a choice that you see at the end where, and I think the reason I love those sort of endings is because there is a pragmatic side where they both just we're not allowed to be in love. So we're going to suffer the heartbreak without ever actually acknowledging it to each other, and partly because they're both afraid that the other person won't reciprocate, and that can be again because of status, wherever their journey is, or whatever was promised. And then at the end, when they're like I said, they don't get on the train, and you see them still standing there, or they come back, or wherever it is, and it's just in that moment. They're they've thrown everything up into the world, and they've just said, I don't care, I choose you. And
that's very romantic.
But it's romantic on all sides, because it doesn't matter whether it's for the woman or the bloke. It doesn't matter which one does it. It's that there was supposed to be an outcome that was guaranteed. I don't know what happens next, but whatever happens next, I'm with you. And the other person is and that's what I want. And that just is fuck. Those ones get me every time. And they're the only ones where the cynicism disappears.
Falls away. I mean, there's a lot of bad romances, but there's a lot of bad everything. And bad is really subjective. Like a book I love, not every book is for every person. And I always tell my readers, my writers, that like if they're worried about someone not liking their book, to go to Goodreads and look up a book that they loved and go down to the 1-star reviews, because there are always 1-star reviews. There's always going to be someone who doesn't like a book, even the really, really popular books. And so to let go of that. Like write it for the person who will love it. Don't try to convince the person who's never going to love it. Just write your story.
When I was a kid, and even as a teenager, a book I must have read, I definitely read it several times, was a book by Roald Dahl called Danny the Champion of the World.
I know that one well. Yes.
Yeah, right? That is a book about a single dad with his son. They live above a garage. Yep.
And they go pheasant hunting a lot, don't they?
Yeah, they go poaching pheasants. Yeah, they go poaching pheasants from a rich guy's land, right?
Yeah.
And his dad accidentally breaks his leg. Danny has to get into a car that he's learned to drive, because he drives around the garage forecourt, and go and rescue his dad, and then bring his dad back. And then basically they use his dad's painkillers as sedatives to feed to all of these pheasants, right? But
that's right.
Yeah, right. But if I wrote that down in just a text, that's an awful story. But the way Roald Dahl presents the adventure and the introduction of the Doctor and the little tales of the Doctor, it's Danny's the champion of the world. It's just, I love it. It's such a great story.
Roald Dahl is a gift. I mean, his writing. You know what I came across in an old secondhand store here in LA somewhere? A book of erotica written by Roald Dahl.
Yeah. He was a dark personality.
I had no idea. There were a whole collection of stories that had all been published in Playboy. I was like, mind blown, because I always had him like James and the Giant Peach, Danny, Champion of the World. Like, these were the stories I knew.
Now, if you don't want your childhood ruined, do not look up his history, because that was a man who had some dark thoughts. Have you ever? I don't know if you had it in America. I think it was an American series. It's called Tales of the Unexpected.
I don't recognize it, but
it was
doesn't
a
mean anything.
mixture of thrillers and horrors. It was like a new story every week. He wrote some of that.
Okay.
He wrote some of the episodes of that, like where people are literally getting killed, murdered, or horror stories. He was, before he kind of gently eased into children's stories, he wrote some dark, erotic stuff. And a man of many talent. You know, we were saying about you've got to listen to that voice within. Well, his voices were many.
His voices were... Well, he was also writing in a time when you could make a living just writing short stories, articles, like, and that as long as you sat down every day and put 1,000 words on the page, you were making a pretty decent living. Yeah, like that was it was a slightly different time.
And that was the thing is, a lot of people. Oh, I've forgotten the name. There was somebody else I was thinking of. A lot of people wrote under different names so that the different kind of genres didn't get confused. And it's only later, much later in life, because like you said, they could write for Playboy, they could write for Sports Illustrated, they could write for like Women's Weekly. And they just write these collection of short stories. Yeah, and as long as they use different names, nobody cared. It was absolutely all fine. And like you said, I remember... Even in the early noughties, when I first started taking writing seriously, there was still money to be made in writing for magazines.
Yeah, and there still is. It's just at this point they kind of have like their writers that they work with, and it's hard to break into. Yeah.
And I would say back in like this, well before my time, but like 60s, 70s, and 80s, especially, there was more. If you were prepared to put down 1,000 words a day, people were screaming out for reliable writers, and you could genuinely pick up,
make a living.
Yeah. People would get that, you send it off, and I remember talking to somebody years ago, and they were saying when they used to do that quite regular, they said, once you kind of managed, an editor could see that you could produce some writing every week for them, or once a month for them.
And if you were reliable and you delivered, they would hire you.
Like you said, if you could do that, if you could prove you can do 1,000 words a day, they were like, and they said, you wouldn't know your story was published until you got your check. They said, you realise they'd used it because your checks turned up every month. They wouldn't even bother telling you which stories and what they used. They said because it's just what they needed was reliability. And they, and they all said, they all made nice livings doing what they loved.
Yeah.
So.
And it's just a technology. We have so much media now. It's just a different landscape. Yeah. One of my heroes is Jack London, because in Northern California boy. And I went to visit. They turned his old house into a museum. And I was reading. And that man, same thing. Like, he put 1,000 words a day on the page. He was making the equivalent of like $3 million a year or something like that. And this was like, if in modern day dollars, but like just writing like 1,000 words a day. And sometimes it was a book, sometimes it was an article, but he made a lot of money.
Yeah, but this is what people don't realize. Like, everything from Reader's Digest to whatever. These people were crying out for reliable writers. And once you kind of got it, take it like anything, it would take a couple of years to build up a network. But once you'd got a few done, and you'd got a few, these people would say, in 1950 or something, 1960, you might get £50 a story. Well, they've written one a day. And and before you know it, at the end of the month, when all the checks come in, they're getting like a couple of $1,000,
doing all right.
Because they love what they do, and in a silly sort of way, they're just writing little short stories.
Yeah,
that everybody else would just, that's nothing. Well, I earn twice as much as you, mate.
So there.
Yeah. Just a couple of ones as we get close to finishing up. Where can people find you?
So if people want to know more about the meditation and writing, they can go to sitrighthere.com. There's like information about the book and some freebies in terms of like a meditation people can try, that sort of thing. And then I'm really easy to find everywhere. It's just April Dávila. At April Dávila is my handle on all the socials. AprilDávila.com is my website. So I'm very easy to find, and I love to hear from writers and hear about what they're working on. And I do have a writing community that I lead. So if people, like, if that accountability is a challenge for people and they want like to put it on their calendar, and if they want a group of people to know when they don't show up and be like, where were you? We missed you. We meet every day. I mean, depending on where people are in the world, not super convenient to those of you in the UK, but because we meet 9:30 in the morning, California time. But, actually, we do have people who join from all over the world. We have a woman who comes in from Sweden. But if people are interested in some resources around that, they should look me up. I'm very easy to find.
Perfect. And my last question, which is just my random question for my own pleasure. I want you to imagine you have a time machine. The time machine is a car of your choice.
Okay.
What would the car be? Where would you go? And what music would you have playing on the radio?
That's a great question. Well, I've always thought that if I could time travel, I would go back to like 1847 San Francisco, or Yerba Buena, because it wasn't San Francisco yet. There were no cars, so I don't know. Whatever I choose, it'd have to be something that would hide easily. So maybe like a Mini in like olive green.
Nice.
Something I could throw some branches over and hide easily. And then music, I don't know, just for my own entertainment, I'd probably bring some like hardcore electronic, like EDM, just to like freak people out a little bit.
That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. April, thank you very much. I have really enjoyed this, and it's flown by. Thank you.
It's really fun to talk with you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And there you have it. And hopefully I might try and get April back on again to talk more about writing, because there's so much more we could have talked about. And maybe I'll do that when Sit Right Here has been published. I think it's coming out in July. I did forget to ask, but the links will be in the description, so please do, if you're interested in writing, interested in April's books, please do check out the website. And as always, for everybody that watches, listens, the people that like, share, comment, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And wherever you are from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.